Hello, everyone. Raul Lopez Jr. here, founder of Tag Talk Speaking Forum. And as you know, Tag Talk stands for transparency, acceptance, and growth. And I'm excited today to interview a friend of mine. We've been friends for many years now. She's come out and spoken at my events. She's impacting a lot of people's lives. So we're just going to get right into it and have a quick chat about all the wonderful stuff that Miss Ada Lloyd does. And Ada Lloyd is the chain breaker. Welcome, Ada. Tell us, what is a chain breaker?
Ralph, thank you. It is an absolute delight to be here with you today. The chain breaker is me because I help people break the chains that link them to the trauma of their past, whether that is bullying, abuse, whatever it is, so that they can have freedom from that pain and live in a place of emotional freedom that allows them to create the future they want unencumbered by their past.
Wow. Okay. And I know, and you know from my experience, I understand that fully. And there are so many people that some know that that's part of their challenge in their life and what's holding them back, and others have no idea what's holding them back. So for both sides of the content and the wisdom that you have that you teach, it's very much so needed. And that's why I think you and I are so much in alignment because you know my story, and I'm not going to get into my story here. Most people know that'll see this. But yeah, we do have a connection there in why we want to help people, because I know you've experienced some things in your life. So I think you kind of answered this question, but let's get into some more detail, right? And the first question is, why do you do what you do? Why are you the chain breaker?
Long story, and I'll try to keep it a little bit shorter for the sake of time,
Okay.
is when I was growing up, I was being sexually abused by my father.
Mm,
It was long before the sexual abuse of children was on the public radar.
mm,
And so, like any other child under those circumstances, I felt that there was had to be something wrong with me.
mm,
It had to be my fault. I was in so much pain that when I was 12 years old, I was standing on a subway platform listening for the approaching subway, trying to
mm,
decide if I was going to jump or not. Fortunately, I chose not to.
mm,
But that led me to a place where I knew I needed to get away because it just wasn't a safe place for me to be.
mm,
And so when I was 15, I figured out how to do that. And 1 month after my 16th birthday, I got myself on a college campus,
mm.
2,500 miles from home.
Wow.
That gave me physical safety, but I
Mm,
took all the emotional crap with me.
right.
And, there's still no programs, there's no books, there's no internet, there's no nothing. Fortunately, a few years later, I received a life altering epiphany. You are not responsible for your father's choices, but you are responsible for how you allow them to impact your life.
Wow. Yeah.
And that has become a real mantra, if you will, for me ever
Mm-hmm.
since.
Mm-hmm.
And so the only thing I could find was the self-help arena. And there were a few books out there from, Napoleon Hill and a lot of others.
Mm,
And so I jumped into that. And if I saw something that seemed like it might help, I tried it out. And if it did, I put it in my basket. And if it didn't, I tossed it and I looked for something else. And eventually I had a basket of things that weren't connected. And so, that was when I had to start trying to figure out how to forge connections.
mm,
Somewhere around that time, and it was at this point, it was like 15 plus years after that epiphany, I received a phone call on a Monday night. It was from the leader of my local church congregation asking me to speak in church on Sunday. And I said, sure, thinking no big deal, faith, hope, charity, I can do this. And then he said, you have more stress in your life than most people do. I want you to talk about how you deal with stress from a gospel perspective. At that point, my heart sunk because I knew where it had to go.
mm,
So I went and found my two younger daughters that were still at home. They were about 12 and 14 at the time. And I said, Frank just called and asked me to speak in church on Sunday. And they rolled their eyes and said, so what else is new? I
mm,
said, I feel like I'm going to need to make reference to the abuse I experienced growing up. Now, they knew about it, but obviously none of the details.
Mhm.
And to their credit, they said, "We're good with that."
Well,
I was going to announce in front of 200 people they had known their entire lives that I had been sexually abused as a child when it's not on the public radar and
yeah.
nobody talks about it.
Wow.
So that Sunday, I started by making reference to the kind of everyday stresses we all experience. And, the guy that flips you off on the freeway,
Mhm.
the teenager that rolls their eyes at you, the boss that's always on your case about one thing or another. And then I said, we all have uncommon stresses that we experience in life. Things like divorce, delinquent kids, having been sexually abused as a child, health issues. I named a half a dozen. And
Mhm.
I said, I've experienced all of these, and this is how I deal with the stress.
Wow.
And that was the only reference I made to the abuse.
Mhm.
Afterwards, I had three women come up to me. Two of them individually laid their head on my shoulders, put their arms around me, and amidst their tears said, I thought I was the only one.
Mm.
The third one just put her arms around me, put her head on my shoulders, and sobbed and sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. She
Wow.
was incapable of saying anything, but I knew, and she knew that I knew.
Mhm.
That was the day that fast forward, or that was the day that I knew that even though my healing was not yet complete, I had an obligation to reach back and light the way forward for those who did not yet know it was possible.
Mm.
Fast forward, a whole bunch more years, and it's 2007, 8, 9, and the economy is going crazy, and it was time for me to shut down my interior design business. And I knew that I wanted to transition into coaching, into helping people, because it had always been the passion of what I was trying to figure out how to make work, but the pieces had never come together. So at that point, I knew there were some things I needed to do for me before I could do that. And that's when I created the 7 pillars of a happy and successful life. Those are personal, your relationship with yourself; physical, everything about your health and your body; emotional, which is largely about resiliency; spiritual, however you define spiritual; professional, whatever brings money into the household; financial, largely about stability and goals and that; and relationships of all kinds. And it's not what society says. It's not what mom and dad said success is. It's what you in your heart of hearts know that success looks like to you.
Mm.
And then weave that together to create your unique definition of success.
Mhm.
And so at that point, I started working with people, and a lot of it was about goals and goal achieving and procrastination. And some really good things were happening. But we would get to a point and people would be stuck. And when we started to explore that, it always came back to something that happened in childhood. And so at that point, I began to do a lot of research, and I began to really delve more deeply into how my childhood abuse and trauma had impacted me and the things that I had done to move beyond that.
Mhm.
And so gradually that became a part of what I was doing. And then a couple of years ago, I did something really stupid and I fell
Mm.
and wound up in the hospital for a couple of days. And when I was released from the hospital, I had the very clear understanding that I needed to rip apart everything I had done and rebuild it with God's help.
Mhm.
That was an amazing journey. And that's what led to achieving emotional freedom now.
Wow. Ada, I've heard your story. And you know me in the industry that I'm in, I hear stories every day, all the time, and I forgot the impact that your story has. So I'm glad we're back on here today. I love, you know this, I love the part of people sharing their story where somebody comes and shakes your hand, puts their head on your shoulder and says, I thought I was the only one. And that's why it's so important for us to get out there to do what we do. Because people seclude themselves, they keep it a secret, they don't know that it's happening to other people. And when you figure that out, when you hear somebody else sharing that message, is such an impact. It's such an impact. There's so much growth that comes with it because it's not just me. It wasn't just me, and it wasn't my fault because so many others are experiencing this. And it gives them permission to forgive themselves that no, it wasn't their fault. It gives them permission to go out and help other people and inspire other people, right? You know me, my website say I help people, and that's exactly what you're doing. So you're a perfect fit for being here and what we do. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for getting out there and being bold and sharing the things that we've experienced because so often we don't want to talk about them, but that's how we change people's lives. So I have my next question for you is now you're coaching and you're the chain breaker and you're helping people transform their lives. How do you give me a couple of examples? How do you transform people's lives?
So first, let me give you a little bit of background on the process that I use. It starts by talking about what all of the various things that are abusive or create trauma or bullying, because so often these things have been diminished
Mhm.
and yet they're real. And we want to shove them in a closet, lock the door, put chains around it, and pretend they don't exist.
Mhm.
Well, that's sort of like trying to shove smoke in a closet and pretend it's not going to get out.
Yeah.
It's going to
Yeah.
seep out, it's going to happen.
Mhm.
And so, what we do is once we do that, we identify a primary abuser, a primary enabler that continues to impact your life today. Because if we can break the chain that that person has connecting you to what they did to you, it will give you the tools to go back and break chains to other abusers and other enablers so you
Mm.
can gradually clear out all of the stuff.
Wow.
Now, as we focus on these individuals, we're going to separate out your story from their story. The most common line you hear, and we hear it in domestic violence all the time, if you hadn't done this, I wouldn't have had to do that. But that's the underlying message of any form of abuse.
Yes.
Users
Anything.
and bullies are looking to make you responsible for their choices.
Mhm.
You are never responsible for somebody else's choices. So, what we're going to do is we're going to separate out your story from their stories, and we're going to then focus on the voices that are the legacy of their abuse, the voices that tell you that you're stupid, that you're not good enough, that you can't do this or that or whatever. And we have strategies to quiet those voices so that eventually they're going to disappear.
Mm.
And then we go into building what you want for your future. But I've got a couple of favorite stories that I would like to share with you.
Okay.
One happened, she was the first person who went through achieving emotional freedom now after I created it. She was reluctant because she'd been in therapy for 5 years and nothing had changed. Now, growing up, she had experienced physical, sexual, emotional, mental, and financial abuse. Okay. So, really big ball of ugliness. And when she got herself out of that environment, like would be so common for so many, she got herself into another abusive situation and made very poor adult choices, which she totally owns. Eventually got herself out of that and started trying to figure out how to build her life, not even rebuild it, but build it. And so what happened was that she had been in therapy for 5 years. She'd married a really good man who supported her. It was a second marriage. And she was reluctant to try something else. He was reluctant for her to try something else because he didn't want to see her disappointed again. And he didn't want to spend more money on something that probably wasn't going to work.
Mm.
But she decided she wanted to do it. And so in week 6, it's a 12-week program. In week 6, she came onto our Zoom call with tears streaming down her face. And she said, "You know that I was in therapy for 5 years and nothing changed.
Mm,
In 6 weeks, you have changed my life."
mm,
At that point, I had tears running down my face.
yeah.
And at that point, I knew that what I had created with God's help had the power to create miracles beyond anything I had anticipated.
Wow.
Fast forward to another woman who hadn't approached me about childhood experiences, but rather about some things in her adulthood. She was in her early 60s and she had her own bookkeeping practice. Now, along the way, I had learned that she was a CPA, but she didn't identify as a CPA. And that confused me because I've been around CPAs my whole life. And I know what's involved in terms of academics, in terms of experience, and in terms of testing to earn that designation. But I hadn't had the right opportunity to ask her about it. And one day, as she was talking about something she was focused on, without even pausing, she mentioned, "In third grade, my teacher told me I would never be a success in life because I wasn't any good in math."
Mm,
Ding, 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 ding. The bells are going off in the back of my head. But we finished what she was concerned about. And then I circled back and I said, "Tell me more about that teacher in third grade." She said, "No, there really isn't much to tell. That's really all that happened." And so then I said, "Does that have anything to do with the fact that you don't identify as a CPA?" Boom, a light bulb went on.
mm,
She did not feel worthy of being a CPA in spite of the fact that she had earned that designation
yeah.
because of what that bullying third grade teacher had told her 55 years before.
Wow.
So, in all of her adult career, how much had she lost monetarily identifying as a bookkeeper, not as a CPA? Because
Mm,
there's a big difference in what they can bill.
yeah.
What had she lost in terms of opportunities? What had she lost in terms of self esteem? The price she had paid was huge. As soon as she made that recognition, she changed her marketing plan, she changed her website, she changed her business cards, she changed her life. I was talking with her a few months later, and she said, "You did more for my business than all of the business coaches I have hired."
Wow.
And I smiled and I said, "I'm glad that, I helped with your business, but I really didn't do anything for your business. What I did was help you identify a block that was preventing you from being the person that you could be
Hmm.
in your business
Yeah.
and in life."
Yes.
And when things like that, or the first example I gave you, those are the things that bring me joy.
Yes.
I find it so gratifying when I can use my experience, my story, my expertise to create a safe place for somebody else to change their life and to heal from pain that they may or may not be aware is there.
Amen. I love it. So many people that I work with will come through our events, our programs, and they're looking to make money, which is fine. We all love money, we want money, we have money, the whole thing. But people don't realize what you just said. The way you're going to make money first is your mind, your body, your spirit connection, and understanding the power that you have in being worthy. Because if you don't believe you're worthy, just like the CPA, she did the work, she had the degree, but she didn't feel worthy to say it. She didn't feel like she can get out there and be the CPA because somebody told her something so many years ago. Once she discovered herself and her power that you did for her, that you helped her with, she was able to be more successful in business. And that's the key for anybody that's watching this in your life, in your business, in your relationships. If wherever you're doing, you're not having success and you can't figure out why, you got to go intrinsic, right? And that's what Ada teaches, is the intrinsic side of things. So before we get to your final thought, I just want to say Ada's information is going to be below, above, somewhere, wherever you're watching this video. If you have problems with self-worth, if your business is not going the way you want it to be, it may not have anything to do with your business. You know, if there's some challenges, if there's some roadblocks in your life, if there's some chains holding you back, Ada is the one that can help you break them. So her information will be here. Ada, give us your final thoughts and let's close out with this incredible story. Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure, Raul. You know, the thing that breaks my heart more than anything is to see somebody living in pain when I know there's an alternative. And, sometimes people in their 60s, 70s, 80s just feel like they're too old.
Mm.
My answer is I don't care how young you are or how old you are. Your time is now. Don't cheat yourself out of another day that you could live in joy by living in pain.
Yeah.
And I will make a disclaimer here. In the process, it will get worse before it gets better. But it will get worse for a very short period of time before it gets better
Mm-hmm.
forever.
Yes.
And that's the commitment that you have to make to yourself,
Mm-hmm.
that you are willing to endure a little bit of pain to have emotional freedom forever.
Amen.
And the difference between living in the darkness of pain and the light of freedom is really something that I don't know that you can fully perceive until you walk that road and you experience the difference.
Amen.
I want to be there to help you walk that road. I don't want to see you in pain.
Mm. Amen. Yes. Thank you, Ada Lloyd, the chain breaker, so much for being here today. I look forward to seeing you again, chatting with you again. I appreciate knowing you for these years, continuing to support TAG, and we support you. Like I said, Ada's information will be somewhere around us, above us, below us, but it's going to be here. Reach out to her. I don't know if you offer 30-minute consultations or what you offer, but I'm sure Ada is happy to connect with you and see how she can help you and help you change your life from where you're at now to where you want to and where you need to be. Thanks so much. We'll see you again. Bye-bye.